Good morning, class. We're going to be doing our first video demo this morning. I'm going to be showing the process for getting started on your form model. And I've got a camera here so that you can watch me work. Right, so we're going to switch to that camera now. All right, so you can see I've got all my things set up ready to work with. I've got a piece of just corrugated cardboard that I've cut to the size of my printout of my symmetrical design with additional lines from the assemblage and hierarchy assignment. Now, mine's a little small. Yours will be the full size 9" by 9". All right, I'm just going to tape it onto this this piece of corrugated cardboard so that I have a solid surface to work on. All right, so just really kind of down and dirty, nothing fancy, just to keep everything in place as easily as possible. All right, so good enough. Now I've got it. And remember, in this design, the final model is going to be symmetrical, just as your design is. So whatever I do on the right side, since my axis of symmetry is down the middle, whatever I do on the right, I have to do the same thing on the left. Now, in terms of the model form, because it takes a little bit of time to build things, initially I'll build just 1/2 and see what it does and see how it works, and then move on from there. All right, so I can be a little quicker. Also, remember that any line that is begun can be extended, so I can use my compass, and for instance, this arc, if I wanted to, I could make it come all the way around to the edge. Or this vertical line, I could extend. It would need to stop at a line just as it would have before, but I have quite a bit of flexibility. I can also eliminate any lines that I don't want to use. All right, I don't have to use them all by any means. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay a piece of flimsy over it and make some initial judgments. All right, so I think I'll be able to keep it still enough by just kind of wrapping it a little bit. A little more carefully. There we go. Now throw a piece of tape on it. It's always good to have things stable when you're working on them. All right, so now I've got this. So remember, in this case, with the axis of symmetry vertical, my light is either going to be at the top or at the bottom, right? It has to stay on the axis of symmetry so that the shadows stay symmetrical. And for no real good reason, I'm just going to start with the idea that the light is at the top. All right, there's nothing about the design that makes me think strongly it should be in one place or another. So I'm going to work with that as a starting point. All right, remember, I want to have the highest elements typically closest to the light. So I find it easiest to work from the light, the top, down. All right, and so one of the challenges in this exercise is being able to make that top edge legible. Remember, we only see where we have a shadow cast. I can't make just a line anything. I have to make shapes. So I'm never going to get that top edge really well defined, other than if I were to put a gray tone that might end there. All right, so initially I'm going to work with the idea of making these rectangles a taller element. Right? Do that so you can see it a little better. Right, so I'm going to make that rectangle taller. Now I know this edge, right, from the PowerPoint. I know this edge that is perpendicular, 90 degrees to my light source, is easy to make legible. It's going to cast a shadow. But I also know that this edge, which is parallel to my light source, isn't easy to make legible. I need the shadow to end there. And since I'm at the top, getting a shadow there will be difficult. So I'm going to modify that and say that that's going to be my shape, all right? Because this edge and this edge are both easy to make legible, right, with the light coming from above, okay? So I'm going to do something with that I'm fairly confident about. Moving towards the center, I see that I have these two big curves. Those are my next lines. And this part of the curve is very easy to make legible, but as it moves towards the vertical, it becomes a much smaller shadow. Still there, but smaller. So that might be a possibility. I could maybe do a gray tone with this little small shape. That would be possible as well. But I also want to think about what is going to build a cohesive and interesting design. So I think what I'm going to look at next is this kind of arrow shape. All right, so all right, and then I think I will make this little bitty shape a gray tone so that it gives me this top curve. All right, so let's see how that's going to work and the process that we're going to use. All right, so I know I need to have one piece that's 3 inches tall, and I want my tallest pieces towards the light. So I'm just going to start with the idea that that rectangle is going to be 3 inches tall. All right, so I have, that one's not going to be big enough. Over here I have a pile of scrap paper, things that just got printed out wrong. I'm just going to use the back sides of them. I want just something that is no cost, really, that I'm going to be throwing away otherwise, and that I can quickly use to get a starting idea. All right, now this one's particularly convenient because I also have my shape here. For some reason, I got this weird printout. All right, so I'm going to just because I'm using paper, I can just use my scissor. Okay, so I've got that. Good enough. Right, this is very much a good enough level of craft. All right, now I decided I wanted that piece 3 inches tall, and conveniently, my squares, at the same scale as my drawing, are 3 inches tall. Okay. Now yours you'll actually be measuring because yours are at the right size. My drawing is, as I said, a little small. But again, it's good enough. Right now, I'm just trying to work quickly and get a basic idea of what's going to be workable and then move on from there. I'm not really making any final judgments. I need to get things built quickly because I can't see it until I build it. So what I'm doing now, right, I have a strip of paper that's the right height, right? That this dimension is my 3 inches. All right, and I need to make the walls that are going to be this shape. All right, I have the top. right? So I need the walls. So I just laid this against it. I didn't measure it. I just laid it against it, marked it, and folded it. And now I'm going to do the same thing here. Just going to lay it against that. And then, you know, keeping my edges so that my folds stay reasonably square. If I can see my paper isn't all that square. Now I have two sides. I don't know if it's going to be long enough. Ideally, it would be long enough to go all the way around. Well, it looks like I'm going to be pretty darn close. So I come to my next edge and fold it. Can't keep that very square. And then to my next edge. Wow, I got super lucky. Almost like I planned it. I didn't. I just got lucky. All right. Normally, when I'm doing this kind of modeling, if I know I'm going to be using certain heights, I might make a bunch of strips of paper, you know, and just have them ready to work with. All right, so now I'm going to just use Scotch tape and put this shape together. And this is rough modeling, so I don't care if it's, you know, beautiful. I just want it good enough that I can see what's going on with it. Shape going in the right direction. Piece of tape. Gotta remember to work where you can see what I'm doing. And so it's a little rough. I don't know quite what happened here. Yeah, my bottom's good. Top's a, well, I know this is a little bigger one. Just trim this off. Wasn't quite, there we go, perfect. All right, so now you can see I've got that shape. I'm going to attach it, and you know, I could take my flimsy off and put it right on the model, but I'm going to just leave it. It's fine. None of this is going to be permanent. I'm going to be taking things apart, putting them back together, trying different things, and seeing what happens. But just put a couple of pieces of tape. All right, now I've got that. Okay, it's not pretty good. All right, let's see what the shadow looks like. See if I can get a shadow that we might be able to see. I might need to turn some lights off, maybe not. Look at that. All right, so I'm just using my phone. I'm going to turn everything around so that you can see it, otherwise my phone's in the way of the camera. All right, so there's my model, and you see the shadow. Now, because it's 3 inches tall, I need to get my angle. Set this. There we go. All right, so I need to get the angle so that it's 3 inches long. All right, and so what I'm looking at is where this front edge is. All right, and so since these squares are 3 inches, it should be there. Okay, about like that. Now, one of the things that you see how the left and right sides are flaring out, right, where this is running diagonally? That's because I'm using the camera or the flashlight on my phone, right? It's the light is a cone-shaped light, and that's true of all of our flashlights. But what we're trying to simulate is sunlight. Sunlight's cone-shaped also, but the source is millions of miles away, so it appears to be parallel. All right, so even though my light is flaring out to the sides, when I go to draw it, you know, and based on the geometries I explained in the PowerPoint,
I'll draw those lines as straight. So what we're really observing here is the length of the shadow. Okay, that we can really understand. The others we have to imagine that that edge is a vertical line. Okay. Now don't stress about this. The process we're going to use, you're going to build these models, right? Then you're going to put it up on the wall, as I illustrated in the PowerPoint, so that it's vertical. I can't show you quite in this camera angle. And then you're going to take a picture of it. And I'm going to sit down with you virtually and mark up that photograph to show you exactly how to lay out your shadows. So don't worry or get anxious about how that's going to work, because I'll be there to help you with it. Okay. All right. So the next one I'm going to look at is this little bitty shape that I want to make a gray tone. Okay. Now that one, I'm going to make it just slope. I'm going to make it a diagonal plane, right, so that it's sloping away from the light. I chose this one because it's little, and one of the challenges with the diagonals is the length of the line, right? So the distance from here to here is the height difference that it has to be at least. It can be more than that, but it has to be at least that much to show up as a gray tone. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use right now. I have this little tool so I can measure this little triangle with a ruler on it. And that in this drawing is just about a 1/4 inch. All right, so I'm going to start with the back of it being the same height as my big shape here. All right, so I'm just going to use this because it's convenient, but you might want to draft some strips with the with some heights. Okay, and now I'm going to start with a very similar process to what I did before. Measuring the length of that line here, okay, and then folding it at that point. And then I'm going to lay the curve along it and mark it. All right, so again, this isn't anything really precise. It's very imprecise. Okay, but you see I made that little mark. And again, I'm going to fold it just because it's easy and quick and good enough. All right, now since this is symmetrical, I did that right. Check it, yeah, it looks pretty good. The other side of it's going to be the same length, so I'm just going to fold it again. All right, so now I have the back. Right, it's going to be the back of my shape, and then these are the two surfaces that are going to be the point. And I'm just going to cut a little bit past that, so I have a piece to fold back and tape. All right, so I now have my rough shape. Right, so you can see how this sort of matches that, right? It's going to fit right in there. Okay, so, but I need to make it slope. Well, this is where it gets tricky. All right, so we measured this and found that it was a 1/4 inch. So I need this point to be a 1/4 inch lower than the back. All right, so I'm going to just measure on that line. One 1/4 inch. Okay. And I know that it's a smooth slope. You know, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be close enough. So I'm just going to draw the straight line between those points, okay, between my back and my front. And as a starting point, it's going to be good enough. If it was a triangle, instead of having an arc on the edge, it would be correct. But with the arc, it's going to be a little different. But again, for my purposes right now, this is going to be good enough. The process I'm going to use, I'll explain how you would translate it to be a little more precise. All right, so now you can see I've got the back is tall, I have the little divot, and then this is where I'm going to attach it on the back. All right, so now I have my shape. Right, you can see the front's a little lower. And what you realize is, you know, this matches that shape pretty well. Good enough. When we attach it, it will be fine. But what I realize is that the shape that is now the top, right, because, I'm trying to figure out there, because I've got this angle, that shape isn't the same shape as I had before, right? So what I'm going to do, now use this shape that I made to figure out what that shape needs to be. Now, this is going to be really pretty rough because this shape is so flexible, right? But I know this back edge should be a straight line. So I'm going to, I know you can't see it, but I can see the straight lines through my drawing here. All right, but you could just draw a line. It doesn't need to be parallel or anything, it just needs to be a straight line. All right, so I'm going to hold that carefully on the straight line. And then I'm going to just mark these points. I'm not going to try to, I'm not going to try and trace along the edge. I'm just marking the points, all right? So I have those 3 points. And now I can use a triangle. And get them. Now, you know, this is in no way precise or perfect. It's just to get it done quickly, to test it, to see what's happening. And when I'm ready to build the final model, I'll build it much more carefully. And we'll do another video with those techniques to show you some strategies and some hints for being more precise when you get to that point. But right now, our goal is to get something in place so we can look at it and think about it and change our mind and say, no, you know, I don't like that, but I didn't spend too much time on it, so I can do something different. Now, this little bitty piece is a pain in the neck.
shouldn't have had quite so much coffee this morning. There we go. Get another little piece on that part of the front so it stays put. Next puff, I'm going to be much more coordinated. Not make little big pieces. All right, and now we're going to attach it to our model and see what it does. All right, so now I have that piece. Now I'm not really going to be able to observe the gray tone very well. I can give it a try and see, but especially with it being such a small surface, it's going to be challenging. But I know it's going to be gray, and I know that if I have that gray, there you can sort of see, it's going to shape the top edge of those arches. All right, so that has given me a starting point. There we go. All right. So now I want to think about what to do with this shape. One of the things you noticed, I have a big shadow from this, and if I don't do something, I'll get a big shadow from this because they're tall, their shadows are long, and they're going to affect a lot of my model geography. All right, so I have a couple of different things that I can think about in terms of addressing this area. I can make the shape in a similar way that I made my first shape. I can build that up and have it at whatever height I want. The taller it is, the closer it is to the height of my taller edges, the shorter the shadow will be. The lower it is, the longer the shadow will be. And especially here, it becomes a pretty small element, and so I want to be careful that it stay clear. One thing that I can do, and I think this is what I'm going to try with this, is to build the things around it and leave this as a void so that the shadows of these pieces fill that up, all right, because they're going to come all the way down to this tip, and then that shape stays pure. All right, I see all of the edges. Otherwise, I will get the shape of the back, but the front will be different. Right? It won't keep its true geometry. If I build this as a solid shape, I would get a shadow cast by this edge forward and this edge forward. It would be a little different because of the slope, but not a whole lot. But then I would also get the shadow of this cast forward and this cast forward. Right, so you see how that shape changes. But if I keep it a hole and keep it a void, it will keep its integrity. And I kind of like that shape. So that's what I'm going to do right now. All right, so to do that, I would build this shape and this shape solid. Okay, so I'm going to pause this. You don't need to watch that and take the time. And when I get it done, I'll come back and show you. All right, so I'm back and I've made these shapes, again, very roughly, very quickly, even more quickly. You see this one, I just made 3 sides because I know it's going to attach right there.
And this one, I haven't made the back. I don't know what's going to attach there, but it's, again, enough for it to stand and see what's going on. Now, I don't even need um, to tape them down to test the shadows. So if I put this back here, you see, I see the shadow that is cast by this element onto here. And we'll talk in a second, I'll explain how you can know if it's the right height. I can see that this inside is full of shadow. I mean, it's not real dramatic because I have so much light on around here, but I can understand that. And then whoops, those are sliding around on me. I also get some shadow from this element onto this element. All right, now in terms of the height of the shadow, the length of the shadow, the height difference between this element and this element is the same as the dimension for the length of the shadow. So if this is 1/4 inch taller than this shadow will be 1/4 inch long. If it's 3 inches taller, then that shadow would be very long and would cover up that whole shape. Right? So I always want to think about my shadows in terms of the surfaces they're going to land on and how they're going to help articulate, how they're going to help me visually understand that this shape is different from this shape without making this shape disappear. All right, so right now those relationships seem pretty good. All right, and I know I can do the same thing over here. Now, what we haven't talked about at all is what this is doing compositionally and how this would come together into a larger compositional form. We've just been talking about how to build it, how to make things legible. And one of the things that I see at this point is I'm not sure if I like these decisions I've made, right? Not because they're not effective as pieces in themselves and what they're doing, but because they don't give me a good place to go from here, right? So just so we can see things a little more clearly, right? I have this shape. I've made it so I can see it clearly, but I don't really have that shape anywhere else. I have this shape. Again, I've made it so I can see it clearly. Now, I do have some shapes that are kind of like that. I have rectangles here and here. I could connect this one and make a similar shape. I could extend this one and maybe, I don't know, the diagonal's going in the wrong direction, so I don't know if that's going to work for me, right? But this shape that I've made very clear isn't something that gives me a lot to work with. So even though I've made these, I didn't spend too much time. I'm not going to use them, right? I'm going to look at something else instead. And so what I'm going to look at is the curves. I have this curve. I have this curve. I'm not sure where the center point is for that one anymore, but we'll figure that out. I think it's right here. All right, so I'm thinking, what happens if I extend that circle? And right now I'm just drawing it and see kind of where it might go. All right, so I know this doesn't show up as well as I would like, but it's doing something like this. All right, so what I'm thinking is rather than have this shape stop where it does, if I bring it around to here, I'm going to make it a little bigger, I can get that top edge of the arc very clear. Right, and then maybe, or another thought is maybe I actually build this shape. Right, so I don't know for sure what's going to work, but I know that if I do this shape, I could then do maybe this ring a little bit lower, and then this ring a little bit lower, and have them tear down. Okay, so that would be another strategy. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop with this. You understand the process of working really quickly in paper and putting these forms together, testing them with your light, and then seeing what happens. How is this going to come together in an overall composition? Right? See you later.